my pants. It's okay. Where's that lady?
You guys don't be shy if you want to move up.
Yes, please.
There it is. It's screen. We're saving this to our website, so you can just go on the website
Okay.
and use it for whatever you want later on. It's also on our YouTube channel.
Perfect. She goes, it's not helping.
Okay, is your mic? You guys share this.
Right.
Okay.
I'm Devi, by the way. Thank you. Kadon. Nice to meet you.
All right.
Yeah, these are quite
Where's that lady? Oh no. Can someone try to find the last lady, Margaret? Just do you know remember what she looks like?
Don't do a transfer like me with the mic, okay? Just hold it in front of you.
Yeah.
Vivian is gonna see if she sees her. Thank you. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I feel like I'm going to lose
Just wait.
control of this at some point.
Oh no. Where'd she go? 2 minutes. Yeah, run.
It's going to be a struggle getting up on the chair.
Yeah, no. We can ask somebody. Can we have some water, please? Please, thank you. Two. Do you have one already?
I had mine is in my bag.
Okay. Three.
Sorry. It was going to be a struggle getting back up on the
Yeah.
chair.
Yes. Thank you. Give me another one, please. One for me. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Can we ask them? I would. Yeah, I would wait. Thank you. It will look better if the class comes, and then give Margaret time to get here. Where am I gonna put this now?
Yeah, no, we had to like.
Yes.
I'm scared to turn. I'm really scared to turn in this chair. Can you? I'm not moving. I'm not moving. I'm not moving in this chair.
Yeah. Testing. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Test your mic. Okay.
Testing.
1, 2, 3. Testing. Try it with you, Devi. Yeah.
Testing.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good day. Thank you so much for coming. They're actually just testing the levels. So, okay. I want to thank you so much for being here today at the Whose Body Is It Really Symposium and Expo for Women. And thank you guys for being here today. We really do appreciate it. And we've got some amazing guests here coming here today. We've got Devi. I'm going to have you pronounce. We've got some amazing ladies, and they're going to. Okay, no. David Crockett. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So, Kadon, starting with you.
I'm Kadon Douglas. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager at Women in Film and Television Toronto.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we're just practicing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Devi.
Yes,
Devi, yes.
There you go. I got it.
Hi, I'm Devi Ekananad. I'm the head of marketing for Coalition Music Management and record label.
And here we've got Margaret. Margaret, how are you? Just put your bag anywhere and grab a water. Thank you. And yeah, okay. Okay. Yes, Carlene. Nice to meet you, Margaret. My hands are cold. Nice to meet you. This is Kadon. Devi. Kadon. Okay, great. So we're just doing a little bit of a test.
Need some help because
Yeah, I think they should help us.
the table. Very good. Is that okay? How's that for reach? Keep going. Should I tighten it?
Yes, maybe. Because I just need to put that somewhere. Oh, no water. No water. It's not a problem.
Yeah, okay, never mind. I don't see, I just handed a bit, left a bit. I don't
Good to get on.
Okay. Smile, smile, smile. Sorry. If, some people around here be doing jumping jacks. That's what I usually do before I go on set. Yeah, because it gets you revved up. You don't look like a deadpan. Oh, really? Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. You good? Good. It's going to be fun, right? Good. Thank you. I love the energy. Thank you so much. Keep that up. Because the energy from you comes right back up here. Okay? Good. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, guys. Come on. Good morning. All right, good. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Carlene Daley, and I will be your host for this morning, for this wonderful event. We've got some amazing ladies and, of course, gents in the audience as well. Today's event is called the Whose Body Is It Really? Seminar and Symposium, which, of course, focuses on women in the entertainment business. And as I said, we've got some amazing ladies today. But before we do begin, I'd like to, of course, acknowledge the sacred land that we are sitting on and standing on right now. And this is the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation. So thank you very much to the Indigenous culture and society for allowing us to be here today. So as I said, we've got some amazing ladies. And we've got Kadon. We've got I always want to say Devi. I didn't want to butcher your name. And of course, we've got Margaret. So I'll let you ladies introduce yourselves, starting with you first, Kadon.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. I'm Kadon Douglas. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager at Women in Film and Television Toronto. We're a member-based nonprofit organization that supports the professional development of women in the industry. We provide mentorships, courses that we run with colleges and universities, and we do a lot of networking events just to ensure that women have the support that they need while they build and sustain a career. So yes, that's me.
Great, thank you so much. And you, Devi?
Hi, my name is Devi Ekananad. I work with Coalition Music. I'm the head of marketing there. We're a full-service management company as well as a record company. Pretty much been there for about 20 years, so I've overseen the marketing initiatives for Our Lady Peace, Finger 11, Justin Azuka, Simple Plan. So there you go.
Great, thank you very much.
My name is Margaret. I work with the Assaulted Women's Helpline. So we're a crisis line for abused women or gentlemen if they choose to call. We are province-wide, and we deal with all forms of abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and we are 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And we have 154 languages, so we can pretty much support anybody that calls us. We are completely confidential and anonymous. We don't have call display. We don't have call trace. We don't record your calls. So anybody that calls confident that they're truly going to get a confidential call, and they can say or talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Great, thank you so much. And of course, we wanted to acknowledge two other lovely ladies in the audience as well. We've got Jessica and Annika. They're from Dr. Roz's Healing Place. So give them a nice round of applause, guys, everyone. And as I said, these ladies are here. They'll be here as well to answer all your questions as we go along. But we do want to thank you once again for coming by today. And of course, this is being streamed on Facebook Live. So of course, this is the era for it. This is the media for it. You can't do anything without social media. So of course, you know what I mean? If you have to hide your face, well, no, you don't have to, because everything will be done. Your questions will be taken from behind your head, so therefore no one actually sees who's actually asking the question. So feel confident that this is a private space. So thank you guys once again for coming. Now, just to jump into it, and Margaret, seeing that you've got the mic right there in your hands, in regards to the Me Too campaign and what you've seen happen lately in society, what are your personal thoughts? Why do you think that this happened now, and where do you actually think that it's going to be going from here?
Well, I think that it's happening now as, you know, as a culture, as a community, I think because more young people are speaking out and acknowledging that it's not okay. And I think that with the empowerment of the youth kind of saying this is not okay, and I'm referring to men and women saying this is not okay, that I think it made more women feel confident enough to kind of speak out and say what they're feeling. And then I think as more successful and powerful women and men have spoken about their trauma, they've encouraged other people to do that.
Right.
So I think by sometimes, unfortunately, it's the lone voice or the sole voice that kind of speaks out, and then it gives people the strength and the courage. But I think also part of the campaign taking off is not just the person speaking out of who she was, but truly the community rallying behind them and not ostracizing them, which if that happened 20 years ago, people would probably just ostracize them and shut them down. But that the community has actually rallied with them to say this is not okay. I think that's why it continues to be more successful, and people are talking about it more and trying to get the help that they deserve and trying to stop the behavior.
And do you actually see a difference in the numbers of women that have actually approached you and said, listen, this has been happening to me? Or do they feel more empowered now that we're speaking out more so?
I think we have a lot more women that are calling us
Right.
for support, not necessarily telling other people, because as much as we're saying it's very supportive, it's often for many women feels very shameful or very uncomfortable.
So still that shame.
So there's still a lot of
Right.
shame. And again, when we kind of talked about some of the men that are speaking up, there's a lot of shame for them as well. So it's just, you know, we are finding that more people are reaching out for support for
Right.
us, and hopefully then being able to do some of the healing that they need to do.
Great, thank you. And David, do you think that you're in the music industry, do you think that this has made a difference in the music industry, seeing what's been happening lately? Has it impacted your business in any which way, shape, or form?
Well, it hasn't impacted my specific business,
Right.
but obviously the Me Too is a long time coming, especially for the music business.
Of course.
Unfortunately, we do have a reputation of being synonymous with sex and rock and roll. That's basically what
Right.
you know people think of when they think about the music business, but it's still not. There are some lines that have been crossed lately, and I'm sure that you've seen that in the news. And I'm really glad that this is actually coming to light. Like you were saying, 20 years ago, if anybody came forward, you would be ostracized. You'd actually even probably lose your job if you had
Right.
mentioned anything to HR, even if there was an HR, because a lot of our companies are small. I mean, you have the big major labels, but most of the industry in Canada are, you know, 5-6 people operations. So, you know, I'm glad that it's coming, and I'm hoping to see a lot more changes in our industry. I know for a fact that there are some nonprofit organizations in our industry that are trying to make some changes.
Right.
There's a safe space venue initiative that's happening out in Vancouver during the Juno weekend this weekend, and hopefully that'll come across Canada as well. But yeah, it's a long time coming, and I'm glad it's here finally. I really champion the young people that are coming forward to it, both men and women. So.
And do you think that the young people have actually made it the reason why right
Absolutely.
now? Because
Absolutely.
not that it wasn't happening years ago, because it certainly was.
No.
But why is it that now it's being so prevalent, and it's, you know, why do you think there's such a difference in terms of that?
I really feel that there's a confidence among young people
Right.
working now than there was when I started into the business. So, you know, at that time,
Which was yesterday, right? You
Yeah.
started yesterday,
Yeah,
right?
no, it was actually 25 years ago. But you know, when I came into the business, it was
Right.
like you got to be allowed into the boys' club, and now it's quite equal. I mean, if you look around the music business right now, I would say probably it's pretty balanced, as in employees in the work. In the actual industry itself, obviously the executives are still predominantly male, but you will see a gender equality, at least within the working stations that you
Right.
see out there.
Okay, good. Thank you. And Kadon, thank you. Just to kind of reiterate what Devi said, in terms of saying the power struggle, do you think, I mean, you're with the Women in Film and Television organization. do you actually see there being a difference in terms of how things are going to be done in the future?
I think so. The voices are too loud now for anybody to ignore them. And the difference now to 20 years ago is social media.
Right.
That traditionally there was a whisper culture.
Right. So we spoke underneath our breaths.
Everybody knew.
Right.
So a lot of it was not a surprise, but now it's really hard to silence anybody.
Right.
So I think people are being forced now to pay attention to it. They can't just push it under the rug.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you think that these movements, these campaigns, the Me Too movement, the Time's Up campaign will actually make a difference? Or is it something that, usually society has little few things that it gets in a ripple about and then you forget about it? Do you think that this will happen with that?
No.
No. Why so?
I don't think so, because people are really motivated to make concrete change for it. We see here in Canada the After Me Too movement that has started up, where we're thinking about putting together policies to address this. They've started up an After Me Too fund here to support women who need legal counsel. And we're seeing organizations like ACTRA developing policies for it.
And what about your organization? Have you actually made any changes, any differences in terms of how you guys do your day-to-day business? Have you seen a change?
No, because we're continuing our same work.
Okay.
For all of these years, WIFT has ensured that we recognize women in the workplace, that we've given them a platform, that we help in terms of developing their skill set, thereby giving them confidence so that they could lead organizations. So for us, it is really business as usual.
Right.
But what we're seeing, we're getting a lot more supporting that with organizations that want to partner with us now to really show that they're doing something.
And how exactly are they doing that? How are they partnering with you guys in terms of, is it a financial partnership or is it just support? Like what exactly they're doing to work with you guys?
Well, last fall we were approached by Hollywood Suites, who wanted to, they approached us for us to be the beneficiary for their holiday gift giving campaign.
Okay.
So during the month of December, anything that we raised up to $10,000, they matched it.
They matched it, which is
and
nice.
We're using that money towards providing bursaries for women to access our programming. So that's the way how organizations, how companies are taking the lead and actually doing something that will have a long-term effect.
Okay. And Devi, in terms of saying, just to kind of pick up where Kadon has left off, the music industry, has your company made any changes in terms of how it does its day-to-day business to accommodate what's going on right now?
I don't know if we've made any changes per se, but I know that I actively seek out female creatives for my projects. So I look at people who film for me, who do photo shoots for me. I try to instill as much as possible to make sure that there's a balanced representation out there. I know also that just recently, I think the Ministry of Culture and Sports, they put a mandate together that if you are an arts creative asking for funding, you better make sure that you have your gender equality policies in place. Okay. So that's really positive, and obviously we're being reactive to that, and we're creating our own inner policies for it too. Right.
And it's kind of interesting because even yesterday I was looking at my phone and I saw there was a news that came out. Starbucks has finally decided, I don't know if anybody else saw that, finally decided to pay women and men the same, which I was like, it wasn't happening before.
No, and I guess maybe not at the executive level.
Right.
But
I was wondering about that.
I would think your baristas are all making the same money.
I was actually saying to myself, like, I could not believe that at this day and age that this had to be something that is just announced, because it was, to me, it's expected. Yeah, right?
Exactly.
But that's something that we continue on with the fight, right? Yeah. And Margaret, in terms of saying thank you very much, Devi, your organization, what plans do you guys have for the future in terms of how to deal with things like this, that the Time's Up, the Me Too campaign? When women come to you, exactly how do you approach it? And, what steps do you guys actually take?
Well, I think that's kind of I don't know if we're necessarily looking at it differently, because the Assaulted Women's Helpline has been in play for over 30 years. So we've been in this struggle 30 years back when the calls came in, and our unfortunate advice was you know, these are your options. You can speak up, but you'll probably be fired.
Right.
But what's more important is your safety. So I don't know if we're necessarily changing it as much as we're doing a lot of training. So we're doing a lot of training in the community
There
now.
you
We're
go.
getting a lot of options to do training.
Right.
We're trying to make sure we reach out to different people to try to get the word out, to get that support.
Right.
And I think when you kind of asked, even though for us what has changed is not so much that it's changed for us, but again, looking at what's changed in the community. So I'll say the helpline, this has always been our mandate, but like when I talked about the youth are being different, or, you know, how I look out and I see some of the gentlemen in the room, I'm saying, I think that's what's different.
Right.
Is that it's no longer just, it's always been women, it's been a women's issue and women fighting for women. And I think now we're seeing more men that are actually saying, this is not okay. Right, this is not okay for me. I'm not okay this to happen to me, but I'm not okay for it to happen to her.
Right.
So I think it's just for us to look at that and to embrace that as well. And how do we embrace all of the support we get?
Right. And that's actually one of the questions, because you look at the fact of what's happening and you want to approach all the ladies and say, okay, it's a woman's issue, but it really is not. So in terms of the male responsibility, what exactly is their responsibility, Devi, in terms of saying, thank you, Margaret.
I think the first thing they should be doing is obviously educating themselves.
Right.
And I think the second, and probably the most important, is to believe when a woman says that they've been harassed or there's, you know, not gender equality in their workforce. But, you know, I know that in my experience, again, if any kind of situation arisen like that, it's very difficult for a woman to tell a man that she's in an uncomfortable space or that she's been in an uncomfortable situation. And I think now a lot of men understand that and can empathize that. So.
Right. And in terms of, back to you, Devi, actually, I want to ask you a quick, it's okay, we'll get to you, Kadon. In terms of saying what is actually happening right now, do you think that there will actually be a change, or is this something that, and I think we asked this before, but do you actually see a change within the system, and how do you think the change, what does the change look like for you?
I'm not sure what the change is eventually going to look like. And, you know, I know that there is a lot of knee-jerk reaction when the whole Me Too came up in the first place.
Correct.
But I really think just having this conversation itself is making the changes and making people aware of the situations out there, and hopefully empowering you guys to make the change for us.
Right.
So.
Good, thank you. And Kadon, same question to you. So what does the change look like? Is it a systems change? Is it an individual change? How does society deal with what's going on right now?
We need changes on all levels of it. We need policy changes, and that's at the government level, within companies as well, production companies with guilds and associations. So we need that kind of structure in place, and then individuals, we need people to acknowledge like the privilege that they have, or the kind of culture that we're in, and that we need a shift immediately. In the culture, and part of that is education, and also advocating for women and being an ally for them, and knowing that being an ally for women that's something that you'll be doing great for your masculinity as well too, that it's tied in protecting women, you're also protecting yourself. So I think it's in everybody's best interest to tackle this and ensure that we get real change.
And in regards to the change, the thing is, with your company, with WIFT, right, what are the women saying? Because a lot of the folks that are a part of your organization, they're actresses, they're producers, they're directors. What is the general consensus in terms of saying what the women are saying right now?
It's still very quiet in Canada.
Oh, really?
Very quiet here. And that's one thing. When the new Me Too movement started in the U.S., we recognized that there was a lot of silence here.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a Canadian culture.
All right, a little bit more quieter than...
Very polite and fake humility.
Right.
And there was a kind of panic in terms of how do we deal with this? We know stories are going to start to come up here.
Circulate, right.
And what do we do? But what I also saw was a very proactive actions taking place for our industry. And people thinking, okay, before things explode, let's see what we can do. Let's start having the conversations. And we saw the round tables starting up. We saw people having conversations on different levels. And then even leading up to this, we saw that organizations like Telefilm had already put in place commitments to gender parity in terms of supporting women and creating more opportunities for women and visible minorities and indigenous peoples and people with different abilities. So we see that that kind of groundwork was already happening, but an urgency set in. And that's one of the great things that came out of that. But still, I do find it very quiet and polite here still.
Right.
I do like US activism, not so much Canadian. It's very boring here.
We're the quieter type.
Yes, but I think a lot of great things are happening here already. And I love that the After Me Too Fund came up. But what I think needs to happen, and I'm seeing in some ways in terms of people saying, okay, yes, speaking up is great, but acknowledging how other women are vulnerable as well too.
Right.
So we're seeing that approach here in terms of how do we support Black women, queer women, how do we support them? How do we support women with different abilities who might have other forms of oppression that they're dealing with? So we really see a great system happening here.
Great answer. Thank you so much. And Devi, in terms of saying, you know, the inclusiveness that Kadon mentioned, how can we reach out to these other communities that perhaps don't have a voice or less than what we have?
Well, I personally think we should be advocating more mentorship out there, especially amongst the communities. I mean, you know, I try to mentor as many people as possible. We a coalition, we also have a nonprofit arm called Canada's Music Incubator, so where we actually teach artist entrepreneurs and artist managers on the business of the music industry and how to navigate it. And through that program, we're mentorships. So, you know, people come to me all the time for marketing advice and funding advice. So, you know, that's one way, but also, like, I think if you want to get into the business, I think the best thing for you guys to do is actually approach women in the business and, you know, set up an interview with them, get chatting, you know, and talk about all the obstacles that were in their way. And then, you know, obviously with the mentorship, a lot of times it actually leads to friendship as well and community building. So. And
do you guys actually have anything set up right now within your company in terms of saying mentoring young women, in terms of saying getting
not specifically young women, but we do. Yeah, we do actually. It's actually inclusive. So we mentor artists as well as artist managers, as well as other young executives that are coming into the music industry. So
great.
That's part of our mandate.
Okay, great. Sure, go ahead.
Just to pick up on what you said about mentorship, that's what we noticed that is so important. And several times I will always tweet out what we need to happen is for people to hire women, invest in women, mentor women. And for us to have those kinds of open dialogue. So we run a lot of mentorship programs. And one that we started last year was in terms of matching people one-on-one. And it was great to see that some men stepped forward to mentor. One of our male members, he actually took on 2 women to mentor during that time. Nice. So that's the kind of thing that we're starting to see, that we need to start providing opportunities at all the levels of it. Right. And also equipping women with the skills that they need to lead organizations. Because we could have women on the ground, but if we don't have them in those leadership positions, if we don't have women green lighting and women who acknowledge the privilege, who do not continue the culture of patriarchy, that's one thing I would like to note too. That once we start having them in these decision-making positions, we will see the shift.
Right, the power shift will.
Because sexual assault, sexual harassment, this is an abuse of power. That's what it is. So we need to change that. We need to change things at that level. And until we do that, we won't really see like real concrete change happening in our industries. So I would love to see that happening. I would love to see more Black and Indigenous people of color in these kinds of positions. So
Make a definite change. Great, thank you so much, Kadon.
So I just wanted to add also, there's another initiative that's happening in our industry itself. It's by a group of women, and it's called 50-50 in 2020, meaning that we are striving to get 50% representation of women in executive boards, which again, that's a voice where hasn't been suppressed, but there hasn't been a lot of representation. I mean, I think the average executive boards out there have about 2% to 5% of women representative there. So
Great. And Margaret, thank you so much, Devi. In terms of saying the Assaulted Women's Helpline, you've got things set up for when things happen. Do you guys have anything put in place to equip women to how to deal with certain situations, or before it might happen, or what do they do? What do you guys suggest?
Okay, well, if somebody calls us, we can walk through it with them. But we
Right.
do, as you said, we do trainings, we do workshops, we do information. One of the most important things is empowerment. So really it's about how do I feel about myself and what is my confidence level.
Right.
And I think we talked about it a little bit when we talked about, women of color, women with disabilities. What does that look like? Because even when we talk about, we talked about the music business and how it can be very sexual, is
Right.
understanding the difference between the being sexual and being sexually assaulted, and understanding the woman's right and her decision that if I'm in a video, I'm making the decision that I'm in this video. I'm making the decision of what I'm going to wear, what I'm not going to wear. It's not the same that then now I've given you the power to rape me. So I think it's really having that conversation and making sure women understand that they have the right to do whatever they want with their body, and not confusing it where we're saying, oh, because you're in the music industry and because you wore this, that means you said it was okay. Or thus then saying if they're in the music industry, why did they do that? Is separating the two.
Right.
So for us, it's just making sure they feel empowered and that we educate people on the difference of what's my job and what's my body and what's my right.
And just to pick up off of that, because I've had conversations with men at some points, and they said, you know what, Carlene, sometimes there's a gray area. Do you believe that there is an actual gray area?
So when people tell me there's a gray area, this
Yes.
is usually my response. So I have a response
I would love
for
to
you.
hear it.
I have a very clear response for you.
Right.
I fall asleep. I'm totally intoxicated. I have my MacBook on my lap, and somebody takes it. Is there any gray area that that's theft?
No.
Nobody's going to tell me that's not theft,
Right.
because they took it. If I'm drunk and I fall asleep and two men sexually assault me, somehow it's a gray area. Did I ask?
Right.
Did I say no? How did they know I said no? How did they know I didn't want it?
Right.
There's no gray area. If you stop, we devalue women and value property more. So if you can't
point.
take my laptop without permission, you can't touch my body without permission.
Very
So
good.
tell them that that's the gray area for them. There's no gray.
I'll write that down and tell them next time. Very good. Thank you so much. And just to pick up on that, David, just to say, because as Margaret said, there is no gray area at all. But do you think that women need to make changes in the way how they dress at all, in the way how they carry themselves? Like, what do you think?
absolutely not.
Okay.
No. Again, it goes back to it's a woman's choice. I mean, if they want to be with you, you will hear those verbal and nonverbal responses from
Right.
them. And if as soon as you hear no, or as soon as you feel hesitation, that means probably no. So
Right.
yeah, there's no gray area. I agree.
There's no gray area.
There
Exactly.
is no gray area.
And Margaret has another point.
sorry.
Thank you.
I just want to go back when you said about how somebody dresses.
Right.
We have to look at it on the bigger scale. So, for example, if we think about some of the urban youth, does that mean that if the person's shoes are untied, that means he's a criminal and I should have the right to harass him?
Right.
Does that mean that if the person's wearing a suit that he's a good person but you're not? So when we talk about how women dress, do we also talk about how men dress? So I would say, yeah, I should dress however I want for the same reason that men can dress however they want. I don't think it's okay that I harass an urban youth because his shoelaces are untied. Then it's not okay that you think you can touch me simply because my skirt is short.
Right, exactly. And that's the point too. Kadon, like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of saying, Kadon smiles.
Consent is really not all that complicated.
Right.
And sorry.
It's okay.
It really isn't. And when we look back at it, sometimes there are always these non-verbal cues that we ignore. We sense that the person is uncomfortable. We hear that they're uncomfortable, but it's a selfishness that pushes that forward. So it's not that complicated. I have an 8-year-old and he understands consent. He gets it, and he's 8.
Right.
So I really don't think that it's that complicated, and it's so much of a gray area. As is to what women wear. What I wear says nothing about who I am really, or what I desire at a certain moment. And because, like, for me as a Caribbean woman who's
Right.
dealt with that for like all my life, even thinking about the carnival culture, like trying to explain Caribana to somebody, and when outsiders invade that space and think that because women are winding up on the lakeshore in a bikini that they have
It means that
access
it's
to their
okay,
bodies,
right.
and no, you do not. You certainly do not have access to my body. So yeah, it's not all that gray. It's pretty simple.
There's no complication.
There is no complication. It's just people acknowledging their selfish desires.
Right.
That's what it is.
And in regards to your company, in terms of what you guys are doing right now, moving forward, how do you see changes being made, or do you see any being made at WIFT? Like, do you guys plan to make any changes to address these issues, or is it business as usual?
So we're planning a few events this year to address it from a legal perspective in terms
Okay.
of giving women the tools that they need and the education that they need to know their legal rights in these situations and how to deal with it. So in April, we're having a panel discussion about that. We're bringing in a lawyer to talk to women about how to process a claim
Okay.
against that. So we're really trying to give tangible tools that women can use to address this. So that's one thing that we're doing. We're also asking a lot of men to step forward. As much as we're women in film and television, we do have male members who have been wonderful, who are participating in our programming, who have stepped forward to mentor women, who have hired women, hired our own members to work on their sets, to work in their offices as well too. So it's to really show men how they could be part of the solution. And that's one of the things that we're focusing on this year, and highlighting how men have done that. For our annual Crystal Awards, one award is open to men, and that's
Okay.
our mentorship award.
Right.
So that one is open for somebody can nominate a man for that. And we've had some really incredible men who've received that, who've, for most of their professional lives, have hired and supported women in the industry. So it's been great. So we're just going to continue with some of our initiatives and introduce some new ones. But that's one where we're really just trying to show how men could be part of the solution.
Not the issue. Because a lot of men have, actually, Devi started feeling excluded, right? I've had a lot of conversations with guys where I said, well, I've never done it, or, I've seen my buddy do it, and I've always kind of said something, and why not concerning us as well, too, like in terms of that. So what do you say to the guys who are feeling like that?
Well, I'm hoping that this is not a movement that alienates men.
Right.
I think the only way we can have conversation and change is to include men, and they have a voice in this as well. And they're our allies. Like I think we've said before, we can't progress unless we have the other half of the population supporting us, right? So.
Okay. And what about you, Margaret? How do you think men can be more included in the conversation?
Well, I think they can be more included with the word included. I think what happens sometimes is that it's not wanting to disempower her. So
Right.
I think meaning well, it's let me step in, or let me fix it, or let me do this, when actually it's about empowering her.
Right.
So I think, again, going back to what we talked about, when I said I think is a lot of these are speaking up and saying that's not okay, is that, if you might not be the abuser, but if you're in a conversation where
With-
people are talking about the abuse,
Exactly.
does that not make you just as responsible? And that's what I'm saying, we're not telling men that we think you should go out and beat people up and, throw all your friends out, but you
Right.
really have to wonder and ask yourself some questions. If I'm in a room and my friends are talking about last night, she fell asleep and we raped her and she probably doesn't
Right.
remember. You didn't do it, but if you were there and you saw it happen and you left, is it okay with that? And would that be okay if that was your sister or if that was your mother? So when we
Right.
talk about men joining in, we just want them to, support her, with what she said, but also how do you talk to each other, and what do we condone from our friends?
Right.
If that's not what if that's what you consider to be a friend, because if more men stepped up and said, hey,
Right.
I'm not okay with that, and I don't really want you hanging around with me if that's what you're doing, it would change what people do, because it wouldn't be
Right.
acceptable. Sexual assault continues because it's acceptable. It's similar to racism. Racism continues because it's acceptable. And I think you put it really well when you said kind of the Canadian way of doing things is we're very quiet and sublime in our racism, for
Right.
example. And the same in sexual assault. But I think, again, is the more we talk about it, the more we say it's not okay, the more people will be forced to change. The more we stay silent and don't make comments or don't correct those comments that are, you know, against the LGBTQ or against people with disabilities, the more that we stay quiet because we think, hey, I'm not part of this because I'm not saying anything. We are actually saying something
Right.
because your silence is consent.
And what do you say to the folks who are actually saying, you know, this is just too much? Because I've actually heard that. This is just too much. I mean, every day you turn on television, you see this guy, this person being accused. What do you say to the folks?
So what I would say is, if anything, I feel bad for all those ones out there that are waiting for their name to be called.
You never
But
know
what
if
I
it's
would
gonna
say
be
to
you.
those folks is it is a lot, but I want you to imagine that if this is happening, how much more is happening. So I have
Right.
heard that. Why now? Why is she talking about it now? Why is this such a
Exactly.
big deal? Why is she bringing this up now? So what I would say to somebody is, again, going back to what I kind of talked about, if somebody, let's say, for example, stole your MacBook 5 years ago, do you just forget about it? So maybe you got a new MacBook, but if somebody else brings something up and they're like, oh, but you like, oh my God, mine was stolen too. You still remember, right?
Right.
So if somebody invaded my body, I still
You
remember.
remember that. You remember
So
that.
that's why they're talking about it. And people talking about it is triggering me to talk about it. So again, it is a lot, but maybe it's a lot because maybe that means we need to do better so there's not so much.
Right.
Maybe that's the question. Not why are they talking about it so much, maybe why is it happening so much?
Right. Thank you. And
I also think that a lot of people are coming forward because there was a cloak of shame before. And now when it's revealed, you know, you do feel empowered to talk about it
Right.
and make a difference about it.
Right. And in terms of empowerment, like moving forward, what's going to be the role of everyone in this new climate? You know, how can we all deal with each other and have a cohesive life and together, men and women, in this new climate? What can we all do? Somebody said,
Well, I think obviously the number one thing to do is listen to each other.
Right.
I mean, just because we are advocating for women's right doesn't necessarily mean we're taking away men's right. This is just a human right.
Exactly.
You know, it's just, you know, again, it's something that we need to build together as a community. It won't work if it's only half of the gender population out there, right?
Good. And Kadon, what do you think? What do you in terms of saying, how do we move forward from here? How do we cohesively live in a society when we know what's going on and when all these things are coming out? Like, how do we deal with each other? Because it is kind of difficult, right? You never know who's going to be brought out next.
And coming up from what you said, that this is a human rights issue. And it comes down to us respecting each other, respecting our agency, listening to each other, verbal and nonverbal cues that we may get, and also just being compassionate. That's what it boils down to, just being compassionate human beings and treating people as they should be treated.
Right.
And I think if we move forward with that, with much more humanity, that we'll see a better society emerge.
Good. Thank you guys so much. Now, we've got a wonderful audience here today, so we'd love to throw some questions, coming from the audience as well. But I do have two ladies who are actually in the audience as well, and they're from Dr. Roz's Healing Place. If I can have someone bring a mic over to one of them, if you don't mind. No, it's okay. You sit. Can someone bring a mic, please? That's okay. And someone's going to come. Thank you so much. These two lovely ladies. Thank you so much, guys. And if you can introduce yourself again, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica. I'm
Okay.
the volunteer and event coordinator at Dr. Oz's Healing Place.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Annika Shaper, and I'm also the same at Dr. Rose's Healing Place.
Good. And exactly what do you guys do at Dr. Roz's Healing Place, Jessica?
So we work with women who deal with violent domestic abuse.
Okay.
We take them in. We have 40 rooms at the shelter, and we deal with women and children and rehabilitating them and letting them back into the community. in that
Okay.
sense, yeah.
And have you seen any type of shift in terms of saying what's happening in society right now? Have your numbers increased? What are women saying that come to you these
I
days?
think it's been pretty consistent, but
Right.
yeah, absolutely. There's been a positive change with the whole Me Too movement. It's been great for the center, and we're learning a lot. So
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Annika, what do you think the role of men is going to be from now on? I mean, we've had a conversation up here, but how do you think men and women can actually live and work cohesively to further along this conversation?
I believe it has to do a lot with parenting. I believe that as fathers,
Right.
fathers and mothers, that we have to teach our children, our young men, the true qualities, of respecting women, and not just women, but respecting ourselves,
Right.
respecting our communities. It's just, I believe that there's a lot of change to come.
Right.
But I believe that it does start with parenting, yes.
Okay, good. We've actually never. Yeah. What about you, Jessica? What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, I would have to say the same thing. Definitely with parenting, educating men in communication, and really holding stable relationships in that way, and just being able to communicate properly with one another. So,
Okay, great. Thank you. And now we're going to throw the questions out. If the audience has any questions at all, they can certainly ask the panel or Jessica or Annika. Does anyone have any questions? Anything that might want to ask? Oh, we've got one in
If
here.
anyone has questions, you could come right to the mic.
Okay, so we've got one lady here. Right. Thank you so much.
So this question is from Facebook. It's, what do we do when the smoke has cleared and we realize a certain percent of men are abusers?
Just bring the mic. Okay. So just technical things right here. Okay,
Sorry
thank you,
about that.
Janine. It's okay.
So again, the question is from Facebook. What do we do when the smoke has cleared and we realize a certain percent of men are abusers?
Good. Great question. Thank you so much. Anyone care to answer? Great. Thank you, Margaret.
Well, I think one of the things to keep in mind, which is why we talk about the importance of, for example, like when we call the Assaulted Women's Helpline, we really talk to her about the consequences of disclosure. Because unfortunately, unlike, let's say, a movie star who has all the support around her, there might not be support around this disclosure.
Right.
So I think we talk about when all the smoke clears, I think it's about what support do we give to people and what are their expectations. So it will hopefully not die down anytime soon. Hopefully the motivation will continue that will want to make change. But if it does, again, I think it's just for society to acknowledge, and I think the goal of it not smoke clearing is for us to just keep it going.
Right.
Right. If not exactly the word Me Too, but we just keep it going and we just keep saying it's not okay, and hopefully it will not settle.
Right. Good. Davey, what about you?
Well, I also think there's got to be some laws as well that need to be formed around this, because there are extremes, there are subtleties to sexual harassment, and I think we need to actually define those as well. And maybe with that definition, people will understand again complicit and what's acceptance. So.
Right. What about you, Kadon? What do you think happens like after the dust clears, after everything has settled? Do you think that it will settle? Do you think it's going to continue on?
The culture that we're in right now, it's been in existence for a long time, and it is complex. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, and we need to acknowledge that. It wouldn't be a quick fix.
Right.
So that's one thing, and I do worry about vulnerable women, especially in our industry where work is highly precarious.
Right.
When I was freelancing, it was like, okay, I have a job for 2 months. I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. Or I've been in positions at some workplaces where not really something on the lines of sexual assault would happen, but something that's racially insensitive would happen.
Right.
And what happens if I speak up? What would be my reputation afterwards? Would other people hire me?
Because there's so much thought process.
Yes, there
right.
is so much of that in terms
Right.
of people coming forward. So when I hear about the Time's Up movement, the Me Too, the After Me Too movement, I think about those women who do not have that kind of support, who do not have people in power to advocate for them. And sometimes I understand why they stay silent. I truly get it. So that's what I'm preoccupied with right now. How do we support these women and really let them know that it is safe for them to come forward? So, yeah.
And what, in regards to that safety, like what does safety look like for women who want to say something? Is it about going to an organization such as Margaret's, or what does it look like?
For me, I think it's having other women in power to be your ally with this. and having maybe not just women, but other men in power as well too, who would stand by you through it.
Right.
Because when you see like your financial future is at stake, that's a lot to consider for that. So I think we need to have more powerful allies as well too. But it's something that I'm thinking about actively at the moment.
Good. Very good. Do we have any other questions at all? Do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, we've got another question from Facebook. Great. Perfect. She's over here. Facebook is jumping off live today. I like that. Thank you.
So my next question is, thank you very much,
You're
is how
welcome.
can we create safe spaces for students?
Very good question. How can we actually create safe spaces for students? Kadon, seems that you have the mic.
I'm not too sure.
What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to pass it.
Okay.
I don't think I can actually answer this as well.
Oh,
I'm
oh.
assuming that there is some type of organization within schools right now that students have a voice in. Obviously, you know, there are some issues that are quite sensitive. So hopefully whoever is running those organizations are aware of that, and hopefully there's some policies informed within schools. So, I mean, I'm not sure what happens at Centennial College.
And do you think the school has an obligation to create a safe
Absolutely.
space?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay.
You know, especially with the younger generation that's coming along, I think education and support is much, much needed.
Right. Margaret, your thoughts?
Okay. So I think similar to what everybody said, but I think a safe space, of course there's an obligation by the college to have a safe space,
Right.
but I think the obligation is more is to encourage a safe space. So again, that goes from top to bottom. So what kind of events do we have? What kind of training do we have? Who are your professors? Who is on your board?
Right.
What opportunities do you give to your students? Who are your mentors? What kind of placements do you provide them? So I'm thinking that we can have all the policies and procedures, and I think they're very important to have,
Right.
but I think it needs to lead by example. So what do we put into place? Do we have a diverse board of not just women, but different minorities, different people, different abilities? Do we have different teachers? Who are the professionals? Who are the part-times? I think with that, that will create a safe space for students. But I think just by having policies and procedures, it's not going to happen. I think that we truly need to lead by example what that looks like, and then the students will follow. The youth is the new generation, but they need to see the direction, right? They will do what they're taught.
Do you actually think that the students can actually create something themselves, like approach the board or approach the schools and say, listen, this is what we'd like to have put in place. We're not feeling okay. This is not feeling a safe space for us. Do you think the students have that obligation themselves? Like, should they do that?
Well, I think everybody has an obligation to make sure that they themselves are safe,
Right.
take some responsibility for their own safety. But I don't know if I would say it was their obligation, but I would think
Right.
that it was their right.
Right.
That they should have the right to go and be heard by the student services. But also I would say that we have an obligation to make my safe space. So even though I might not have an obligation, like I said, to go to the school, that if I'm in a space, I should make it safe. There should be nothing that I'm doing to make somebody else feel unsafe in my space. So I do think they have the opportunity to do that. And I think we kind of talked about change. As she said, these things have been put in place from the beginning of time.
Right.
But I would say one has to have hope. I have hope. So, you know, when I grew up, for example, without aging myself.
Yesterday.
You know, yesterday. I'm only like 20-ish.
21, Margaret.
You know, and I grew up in Calgary where there was
Right.
very few minorities at that time.
Right.
But the LGBTQ wasn't even an option.
Right.
Remember, you know, I think when I was like 16 or 17, they wanted to have a parade, and I think the protest was larger than the parade, so they had to shut it down.
Oh, wow.
So when you talk about, sometimes it seems like this is inevitable and we'll never get there and the mountain is too high. I'm saying I have seen change, right? In my lifetime, I have seen change.
Exactly.
So although we've got way places to go, I'm saying I've seen a lot of change. I've even seen change, I'm not in the music industry, but just seeing who I see on TV,
Sure.
who the artists are and how those artists are treated. Even, you know, people of color, how they're treated as artists now versus how they'd be treated before is different. So I'm just thinking we have to have hope. That's, you know, we'll make change.
Great. Thank you, Margaret. And I think we have a question from the audience.
No, and I was just going to just kind of elaborate more on some of the safe spaces and some of the options that students have at Centennial College. They do have counseling services at all campuses. We have advisors here as well at each and every school. International students have international advisors.
Right.
We have the Center for Students with Disabilities, and there's also a diversity and equity inclusion office as well that definitely works on policies around that. There is a student conduct policy, a sexual harassment policy. We try to encourage students to have as many touch points as possible. So if they come to me and they need counseling, then I'll send them to counseling. They come to counseling and they need to see someone like myself. So we try to create this network and try to have that net, to try to catch as many students as possible and try to ensure that there's as many people as possible they can go to and say, hey, this is what's going on with me, this is what's happening, what's resources or what services or who can you point me to that can help me in this particular situation. I'm just going to hand this over to
and I was going to ask you, before you do that, do you think that it's been effective though? Do you think that the students actually use the opportunities that are given to them?
Just a quick example of this is we're a pretty small campus at the Story Arts Center, and counseling was here, I think, twice a week, I believe, and then after overwhelming support saying that, hey, we need counseling here every day.
Right.
And there's a full-time counselor here now. So
changes have been made.
Exactly. Advisors, I think there's hired 21 advisors over the last 2 years. So there more and more as this is coming out, it's definitely being acknowledged and the money is being put there in order to help students flourish.
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we've got a question over there. Thank you. And can you introduce yourself, your name and?
Oh, hi. I'm Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
Daughter. I work here at Centennial College with Sanjay. And I'm just reinforcing what he said, that there are supports here at Centennial College. So I'm in the Center for Students with Disabilities. Work closely with the counseling center. So if there are any concerns, know that you can come in either to the counseling center or to the CSD. And if you're ready, you can share and disclose that. And if you choose to do that, that doesn't mean that your information is going to be shared. Right. It's kept confidential. And then we work with you in terms of the direction that you want to go with. Right. So the support is here at Centennial College for you. And we have an office at every location.
And I love the fact that it's very private. I've actually used the CSD office at Ashton May campus before, and they're very much on point. So I'm very appreciative of the services that you guys offer. And I think we have another question. Do we have another question from Facebook or? Yes, actually. Okay, can I have the mic, please? Oh, and the mic's over there. Oh, okay, we've got, okay. All right, we'll be right back at you, okay? Thank you.
Okay, so this person is a new immigrant female from the Middle East, and she's just wondering if there's any organization to ask for help and support to get in when she wants to join the industry. So which organization to ask, because
what industry?
Subliminal discrimination.
Okay. Did she say which industry, or? I guess she wants to get in the entertainment industry.
No, she did not.
Okay, so can I have the question again, please, if you don't mind?
Is there any organization to ask for help and support against subliminal discrimination when you're a new immigrant?
Okay. Would you know of any offhand? Okay. What about you, Kadon?
We have, there are a lot of really great communities within film and television. And a lot of them are on Facebook, through social media. So we have on Facebook, there's Black and Indigenous people of color in film and television. And it's really great what's happening there just in terms of giving.
I have a follow-up. She said it's advertising.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So no, I don't know any specific ones in that industry. But as I've been telling people, the creative ad agencies, they're using a lot of people who work in film and television for their work because of how advertising has changed and where companies are putting together like short films and so on. Right. So even if she has support from other creatives who work in it as well, I'm not too sure where else she could check to get specific support.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Devi.
I think there's an organization called Canadian Marketing Association, which I believe a lot of advertising agencies subscribe to as well. So there's got to be some type of support there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I think we have a question from the audience right here.
Yeah.
Your
Should I
name and
introduce
are you a
myself?
student at the?
Yeah, my name is Nicholas, and I'm a student here.
Okay.
So, as we all know, like there have been like stereotypes in the past, which were like used as a way to justify all this. But now in the 21st century, because all these stereotypes are being broken, so if men admit to having been involved, then should they still also get some advice of sorts or like support?
Good.
Like if they've honestly admitted that they have probably sexually abused or
Right.
harassed women in the past,
How can we help them? Is that what you're asking?
basically.
Yeah. Okay. What do you guys think?
Well, I think if they're able to acknowledge that it's happened, we're making progress.
Right.
Because, and when I say they're able to acknowledge, it's not that you told me that I did it, so I'll say yes, because if I say yes, you'll give me a gold star and I can go about and keep doing it. Right? So that's the important thing. So I think if the person truly wants to make change, then I think that, yeah, I think that anybody that wants to make change should be supported to do that. And I think they should get counseling and information. I think, unfortunately, what happens for some people is that I don't necessarily think I'm wrong. Somebody knows I did something, so I'm just going to say I'm sorry. Right? And I think when you kind of talked about stereotypes and stuff and breaking them down, in many ways, as I said, if I think about, how I grew up compared to where it is now, have we broken down stereotypes? Absolutely. Does racism exist? Absolutely. They're just more casual about it.
Right.
So as before, somebody might say something to my face when I was 6, they're not likely to say it to my face now. Doesn't mean they don't mean it. Doesn't mean they don't do it. Doesn't mean they don't decide who they hire, who they don't hire, or who they engage with or who they don't. So I do think that we're making change, and I do think that everybody needs to be supported. I just think we need to be careful that we don't just say, X person, sexually assaulted 5 people, but he said sorry, and he's going to go for a counseling class, so everything is good. On the flip side, I don't think we should just say X person assaulted 5 people, so throw them and lock them in a cage and leave them there.
Right.
So I do think there has to be a balance. I just think it's important that we don't just say, because I said sorry, and I go for a class, that everything changes. Because the lives of those people that he's impacted don't just change because I said sorry.
Right. Good. What about you, Kadon? Thank you.
With something like that, I might be open to hearing the person, and I would encourage people to hearing other people out. If somebody's coming to you genuinely in saying, I acknowledge that there are some things that I've done that were inappropriate, that hurt you. Listening to that person is something I encourage.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have, if somebody has done you wrong, you're not obligated to forgive them. You're not even obligated to really listen to them, but I think that they should have a space where they could share that and actually source healing in some kind of way or some kind of rehabilitation. And I think that now we have a cancel culture where somebody admitted something and just like, okay, they're canceled. I'm not going to listen to anything else that they're going to say. But what that happens, it ends up pushing a lot more people into the shadows.
Right.
And they're not so forthcoming afterwards. And then we're adding to the silence culture as well, too. So I think we need to encourage openness, giving safe spaces for people who are victims, but also safe spaces for some people who are perpetrators who actually want to acknowledge what they've done and to change. So it's a weird kind of balance, but I really think that we'll be better off as a society if we do that.
Great, thank you so much. And I have a question for Jessica from Dr. Rose's Healing Place. In regards to what Kadon and everyone else is saying about a safe space, what does a safe space look like at Dr. Rose's Healing Place for women?
So we have several programs intact to rehabilitate and encourage and empower women.
Mm-hmm.
So the safe space for us is just making sure that these women have a support system at all times if they need someone to talk to about whatever's going on in their life. If they need support in any way, we try to make that accessible to them at any point in time. So I think the safe space is the key there, and making sure that they have someone to talk to and a support system.
And have you guys made any changes in terms of how you do business day to day with what's been going on? Like, have you seen?
I feel like
have you had to make any changes?
I feel like it's been very consistent. The way that we do our programming has has worked very well for us at the center. With the Me Too movement, with everything going on, there's definitely more happening. There's more education. There's more programming, but we do still on a day-to-day do our same programming. It seems to work well for us there.
Good.
So.
And Annika, do you guys work with other organizations to create a safer space for women to get the word out? Like, who do you guys work
Dr. Roz's
with?
Healing Center is all about safety.
Okay.
We keep our, the lockdown is very, very safe. The code, it's a place for women to come and heal, and you cannot heal once you're around perpetrators. And so that is definitely our main goal. And yes, we do work with other organizations to continue that.
It's okay.
Yeah, no. Dr. Roz's Healing Center has become a place for women to feel comfortable.
Right.
And to come from any background. You know, we have women come from all over the world. We have women from Africa. Even myself, I'm from Barbados.
Okay.
I'm from the Caribbean, and I just came here over a month ago.
Oh, wow.
I'm still
Nice.
learning. But Dr. Roz's Healing Place, personally, for me, has proven to be a very safe place.
Okay.
And promotes violence-free life. For sure.
Good.
Yeah.
And if somebody wanted to reach out to you guys, how can they do so? What's the phone number? Or what's the website? Or
sorry.
Our website is drrozshealingplace.com.
Okay.
We also have social media. There's a Twitter handle, Dr. Roz's HP, and Instagram, same thing, Dr. Roz's HP. We have a pamphlet here as well if you
And there are
anybody wants
pamphlets
to
at the
pick that
back?
up, to access that.
Okay.
And our phone number is on there. I don't have it memorized, but you can call at any time. And if you're in an emergency crisis situation, obviously we have access to enter the center through just phoning there. So that's accessible to anybody at any time. Phoning, we have the website and social sites to get current updates.
Okay, great. And what about you, Kadon? How do folks get in touch with you guys at WIFT, Women in Film and Television?
So website is wift.com, WIFT.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find us in any of those places as well, too.
And can anyone from here reach out to you and say, Kadon, I'd like to pick your brain 1 or 2 times, or how do they reach out to you personally, if they can?
So you could just email me. My contact information is on the website. I prefer emails first before calls. So could email me if there are any questions that you have about joining, or
and are there fees? Are there fees to join the
yes,
agency?
so for students, the 1-year fee is $64.
Okay.
And that gives you access to almost all of our programming, applying for mentorships and so on.
And is it something that you have to have your membership done every year, or?
Yes, so it's annual memberships. You just pay once a year. Okay. And and then I would love to welcome you to our community.
Okay, great. Thank you. What about you, Devi? How does someone get in touch with you or your organization?
Well, if you look at coalitionmusic.com, that's our website. We're on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our nonprofit arm, Canada's Music Incubator. We also have a Facebook and a website for that. And if you want to see our programs in action, you can go to, I believe it's at CM Incubator on Instagram and Twitter. And then if you want to personally reach out to me, you can always find me on LinkedIn. So.
Okay, perfect. Margaret, how does someone reach out to you? Well, reach out to your agency?
Okay, well, the agencies, you can always reach out to me, but I can't sing and I can't dance and I definitely can't draw, really? So I'm probably not going to help anybody in this room. But from an agency perspective, I'll just make it simple. I'm just going to say Google it, but if you go to AWHL or Assaulted Women's Helpline, we are on Facebook, Twitter. We have a website, of course. What I will say, though, just to some of the students that you guys are, is that we've partnered actually with some really amazing different advertising companies, a few different ones. Right. So we actually have some different clips, some different things via selfies and stuff that are actually quite interesting. So if anybody, just for information, want to look at the website, you actually be pretty interested in some of the different advertisements they've made for us, some of the different clips. We've made one for the Oscars They made one for a selfie, but it's actually pretty neat. So just somebody that's into that kind of stuff, something to think about. But again, and our phone number is also on the webpage as well.
Great, thank you. And I just want to throw it out there to the audience. Does anyone have any more questions before we?
Sorry, I just have one.
Sure.
I just wanted to let anyone know here, who's ever interested, there is a volunteer inquiry application form because we are always accepting volunteers. It's how we operate at Dr. Roz's Healing Place.
Wow.
So there's a form at the back. It's just you can put your name and email, and if you're interested in learning more, that's what I do. So, and that's how you can contact me. But if you'd like to know more information, there's just a sign-up sheet at the back. I wanted to let people know.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Any questions from the audience? Any further questions? Do we have any more questions from Facebook? Oh, sure, go ahead, of course.
What kind of help is needed to get the 50/50 in 2020 initiative in the mainstream?
I know it's still, I know it's still in discussion, but I believe the women who are launching it, there should be some information forthcoming in the next 6 or 7 months. So if you follow, I believe it's Women in Music, which is basically our voice in the music industry, you'll probably get the news from there first.
Great, thank you. And as we begin to wrap up, Devi, seeing that you have the mic, any final words, any final thoughts to the students, the ones that are on Facebook, the ones that are in front of you? What do you have to say to the young women coming up in the business right now?
Well, what do I have to say? I really envy you, actually. I wish I was coming up in the industry right now. I don't think that you'll have as many obstacles as I did when getting into this business. So I think it's really going to be a great path for everyone who...
Any advice that you might give to them?
I think the only advice I can give, and one that I've learned along the way, is, be outspoken. Make sure that you have your voice heard. Volunteer to as many organizations as possible. I think at one point, before I got a real job, I was probably volunteering at 5 different music or entertainment agencies. And actually, I just wanted to remind you that we do take internships at our company.
Very nice.
We do 4 per term, and we have 3 terms. So we'll be looking for some summer internships starting in April/May.
Okay, thank you. And what about you, Kadon? Any final words, final thoughts?
I mean, the one thing I think that we could do on individual level with this is to hold our circle to account. Okay. Make people accountable. Make sure people know that they can't behave in a certain way around you. That is not tolerated. They can't speak. They can't speak power to really abusive things around you either. Hold your peer group to account.
Right.
I think those are like the small ways in which we could start to see the shift happening. Just speak to you, or just for you, we do offer internship as well too. We always bring on a spring, a summer, and a fall intern. And that's really to work on our 3 major events.
Okay.
So we have one event, we have our showcase in the spring. In the fall, we have our reception at TIFF, which is a large party that has about like 700 people in attendance.
Okay.
And then finally for our Crystal Awards. So just be to contact us directly to get some more information about that. And we're always accepting volunteers for all of our events.
Okay.
So if anybody's interested in doing that, and in terms of tips for anybody starting out or wanting to enter this industry, one thing I would say is your network is what's gonna carry you.
Right.
To have a really strong network, and it doesn't have to be. A lot of people, when they think about networking, they think about vertical networking up.
Right.
Network horizontally as well too. Your friends, if your friend's an editor, you're good on camera, you have a friend who could act. That's great networking to do as well too. So I encourage you to do those things.
Good. Thank you, guys. And I just want to say thank you so much for, stopping by today. Margaret, and I just was going to say your name now. Devi and Kadon. And you, the students, you guys have been amazing. So give them a nice round of applause, guys. Come on. And of course, we wanted to thank Centennial College for allowing us to do this. And thank you to Jillian Edwards for allowing us to do this as well. There will be another installment of something like this at Centennial College at Ashton B campus, which is my campus. It will be my last year at Ashton B campus. So I just thank you for everyone for allowing me to do this. And before we go, we've got a survey that we'd like for you guys to actually do. There are only three or four questions, so it's very simple. This is the first time that we're doing this here. I did this last year at Ashton B, so it's going to be the second time around, but the first time here, so we'd love to do this again. We just kind of have to find somebody else to kind of carry it on next year, and I carry the torch, exactly. Somebody else from here. So just go on to Whose Body Survey is it? Sorry, Whose Body Survey on your phones, and you can actually, the actual link is right there, so you just go on there. Guys that actually can see it. So Whose Body Survey, and just tell us what your thoughts are. Like if you liked the event, if you'd like to see it again, because Centennial College listens, and this is what I like about this college. Being here, it's been such a supportive last 2 years, and Jillian, you've been a part of that. I want to thank you very much for that. So give yourselves a nice round of applause once again, guys, and thank you. And please, please, please go on to the survey and just answer those 3 or 4 questions. My name once again is Carlene Daley, and I thank you so very much for being a part of it. Thank you very much, guys.
I know, I'm going to jump.
Great. Thank you, guys.
It's easier to get off.
Thank you.